Good afternoon, welcome to our Notes Wine Monthly Pack. I'm Brendan, this is Carl. Today we'll be focusing on our cheap and cheerful spring pack. Now the weather's getting better, time to get out some bubbles, some whites, some pink.
Nice pink, beautiful.
Last month we obviously did our Halliday award-winning wines, with a much higher price point, reflecting on the weather, the climate, also rewarding the high point scorers throughout the portfolios.
A bit more of a serious pack, and I guess, as you just touched on, we're going to that sort of spring, cheerful sort of pack. So, of course, we've got a nice, moving into the racing season as well, some bubbles to begin with. Of course, some nice Sauvignon Blanc here, a Gruner Veltliner, an Austrian variety, under our own little label.
Actually going this way.
We're going that way for the tasting.
We're going to be technical.
Yeah, that's true. We don't want to confuse ourselves. So then we've got a nice Chardonnay, so something with a little bit more sort of flinty texture. And then, of course, a pink rosé, a nice pink lid, and a beautifully designed label there, which Brendan will talk you through. And then a nice little GSM for your barbecues and whatnot. I think spring and summer, moving into that sort of time. Great little wine for your barbecues. So I guess we'll get started on the Prosecco.
I think you're looking at over $200 worth of value for the 6 wines, and it's $165 for the month for the pack.
Yeah.
So less than $30. I think it's like maybe $26 a bottle on average.
Yeah.
So you're getting, a bunch of wines for a very, very attractive
Very
price.
honest price,
So let's crack in with the Prosecco.
Jump into the T Gallant Prosecco. So it is a Prosecco DOC, which is basically the classification system used over in Italy, which basically is stipulating that it's a controlled, basically stipulating that the fruit for this wine is from a controlled region, from a particular region, which tends to be Veneto. So basically it's just saying that this fruit is from this particular region. So it's not actually done here by T Gallant here in the Mornington Peninsula. So it is from Italy. So the wine's bottled over there, labelled over there, which is part of the process and the rules for that. I think the label actually mentions bright and zesty, and I've had it before, but for today's tasting's sake, bright and zesty. I mean, without even tasting it, to be honest, that's what you get in the glass, right? It's bright. It does have that citrus sort of zest from the Prosecco grape, which is also known as Glera.
What's different about Prosecco to Champagne, Carl?
Well, Champagne, of course, has to be from France, from the Champagne region. In terms of the bubbles, Prosecco, usually has to be, there's 3 different ways to do sparkling. So you can do the Charmat tank sparkling method, which is done in a pressurized tank. So they'll ferment the base wine out, which is just a juice fermented, which is the alcoholic fermentation, and secondary will occur in the tank. They'll add some yeast and sugar to get that secondary going in the tank. And it's it's a quicker way rather than the French Champagne sort of method traditionnel, which is primary in the tank and then secondary in the bottles, and then with the riddling and extra time on yeast lees. So it gives you a more complex sort of style of wine, whereas Charmats tend to be, a bit more cheerful and sort of fresher and brighter and a quicker turnaround in terms of processing it. So look, just on tasting that, it's not super sweet. I feel like some Proseccos can be a little bit sweet or even steely and oily, but this one's really well balanced.
Great, just aperitif, cheese,
yeah.
party starter.
Yeah.
Any occasion really, you can't go wrong with bubbles. I think more and more people now, whether it's female or male,
like it's not complex, but it's not designed to be, right? It's just
it's designed to be smashed.
Basically.
Smashable, cheap and cheerful.
That's it. We're keeping true to our pack. So I guess we'll move on to the Coldstream Hills Sauvignon Blanc.
2021.
So 21 vintage, which Brendan knows is looking like a really smart vintage here in the Yarra Valley. Just
could be all time.
Could be, yeah. Early signs are great.
It's not my jam, Sauvignon Blanc.
Yeah, look, I must say,
it's not my palate. Get that like greeny, like
grassy sort of
gooseberry,
lychee, a little bit of tropical passion fruit notes.
Yeah.
Which actually, I don't mind. Like, I haven't had a Sauvignon Blanc for a very long time, and then working here at Notes, we actually had this on tasting a few weeks ago or a month ago, and I was actually really surprised by this Sauvignon Blanc. And I'm not a Sauvignon Blanc drinker, so
It speaks a lot about winemaker and vintage. I think a lot of people can be fooled into, going to a winery and seeing, okay, estate range and then, mid-tier and then say a reserve flight and going, oh, I've got to spend more money to get a better wine by buying a reserve wine, which,
Yep.
not necessarily, and I think when customers come in here even, you'll notice I say to people, when they a recommendation, I'm not going to recommend the most expensive because if I believe that the vintage and the quality of the fruit, because ultimately all you're drinking is fruit juice. You're just drinking fermented fruit juice.
Correct.
Right? Yeah, and the quality of that fruit ultimately determines the quality of the wine.
Yeah, ultimately.
2021, from all reports from all the wineries and the winemakers in the Yarra Valley, is a bumper vintage for all grapes across the board. So
Yeah.
I think, while it's not my style, I think the wine is extremely well made. It says a little bit of French oak.
yeah, I think only 5%, perhaps just to take
to
the
round
clean
it
edge
out.
off
Yeah,
and
I
give
think
you
so.
that little bit of texture on the palate, which it does have.
Completely different to like a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc.
Yeah, or even your Adelaide Hills. It's
Yeah.
not too tropical, passion fruity, tooty as I call them sometimes. It's a really nice style, and as far as food matching goes, well, clearly seafood and that sort of thing.
Again, sharp, crisp. It'll cut through fatty cheeses, fatty foods,
Yeah.
seafood, risotto. It'll really work well. Really cold. It'll change as it warms. Yeah.
Alrighty, so keeping with the whites, so we've got Notes, our own little label, our Gruner Veltliner, which is an Austrian grape variety. So,
What's Gruner Veltliner?
well, yeah, great question. It is an aromatic grape.
That's what everybody
variety.
asks when they come in
Well,
here,
that's
isn't it?
true. That is the question. What is Gruner Veltliner? And the best answer is here. I'll pour you a sample, and you can have a little taste.
It's open every day, this wine to taste.
It
here,
is. So
by the
come
way.
on in, and it's always on tasting our Gruner Veltliner. Yeah. So as mentioned, it's an Austrian varietal. It's typically has notes of sort of nashy pear or pear, a little bit of like sort of green pepper, sort of. There's a touch of like spice in there.
Related to the Riesling grape.
It is, yeah. It's part of that sort of aromatic white sort of Riesling family, and the styles can differ big time. There are some Gruners out there that can be maybe a little bit more Riesling-esque, and sort of you get a bit of that petroleum sort of Alsace sort of Riesling.
This loses
But
that
it's-
grassy green
Yeah.
tinge and gains more of a stone fruit,
Very
like white peaches,
white
nectarine.
flowers, yeah, peaches, yeah,
florals.
good call, yeah, big time. It's very That's actually
It's super aromatic.
super
glass.
aromatic, yeah. Food pairing, I'd green pea and mint arancini. Oh yeah. Even some spicy sort of Asian dishes.
Butter chicken,
Yeah.
Indian. I think this will go very, very well. I
Cut
usually
through
have
some
Riesling
spice.
with butter chicken, so this reminds me of that without that that kerosene petroleum smell.
So the fruit's from Henty, far west Victoria there.
Victoria or New South Wales? Everybody always asks us that.
Yeah, so I think there's like an actual suburb or something called Henty
In New South
in New
Wales.
South Wales, and I
Okay.
think that's a confusion. But Henty here in Victoria is relation to the wine region, and it's actually, I think it's actually off the Drumborg vineyard,
It is.
which
It
is
is.
Australia's mainland most southern vineyard. So
So that
clearly
would mean a cool, really cool,
ultra
climate.
cool maritime, obviously.
high acid.
High acid.
Late ripening.
Correct. But yeah, so that's the Gruner Veltliner.
Made by Tom Shanahan.
Made by
For
Tom.
Notes. As part
Correct.
of the Notes range. Only available at in the shop or on the website, notes.com.
So I think next up here we've got probably our more sort of, I guess we've done those three whites that are a bit on the sort of lean aromatic side of life. I mean, now we're getting into something that's a little bit more like perhaps serious for the wine drinker, but it is still cheerful. Chardonnay, it's so struck match flintiness. It's
It's really productive.
yeah. I think only 20% new oak.
Remember as a kid, you're in the fine, you light the match.
You light the match and
thirst
straight away.
comes up, straight away.
That's what I get.
Instantaneous.
It does have that sort of wet slatey sort of minerality to it too. Of course, being from the Seppel Drumborg
You know what wet
vineyard.
slate smells like?
Oh, that's
Tastes like.
I haven't licked a rock.
People
No.
ask that. People ask that.
Yeah.
It's a valid question. Then you know what things smell like or taste like by actually physically smelling them or tasting them. People ask, do you
True.
actually lick a wet rock? And Well, maybe not on purpose, but I think you have done it. I mean, we've all, as a kid, probably done something like along those lines. It's definitely like it's already fuller and more like complex. Like you're saying, to get a little bit more into, a bit more power of wine. Here you got like really, really fresh, really light, lively, a little bit more body and complex. Now you're jumping now into the like more structured.
It is way more
the most
structured.
expensive wine in the pack as well. So you're saying to get
a little bit more complexity for sure compared to the other three whites. So, and the winemaking on this is much more complicated, I think, than some of the other wines. There's 20% new oak. There's a bit of lees stirring. Then
so lees are what's the deposit, what's left after the fermentation.
Correct, which is
the wine goes into the tank to get fermented, and then whatever's left on the bottom is called lees.
Correct.
It's like the dead yeast cells.
Correct. There's no other pretty.
There's no other way to put it. They're just
But,
dead yeast, and then this wine, a lot of winemakers will leave that in bottom, drain out the wine. But what they've done here is they've actually stirred that to add a little bit more depth and a little bit more complexity.
For sure.
And then when after it's gone into, it went into.
So it goes
oak.
into barrels, I think for 9 months, some of which 20%'s new. But then they, I think,
Put it back into its own gross lees.
Yeah, so they'll take the lees out with the wine.
Sounds gross.
So that goes into the tank with the gross lees.
Prior to bottling.
Prior to bottling for an extra 2 months. So they're really
round that out. You get that, gives it a little bit of like that nutty sort of
does
almond,
have a bit of that.
like an almond
Chewy.
croissant. It's really like an almond croissant, and I think.
But it's still quite lean on the palate. Like I was looking at the notes for this, and the acidity is quite high, which doesn't surprise me as to why they've done a little bit of. I think 15% malolactic fermentation, which is that big fancy word
malolactic
for
conversion.
Conversion, I guess.
It's not called. It's a common misconception. It's malolactic.
Because it isn't
fermentation cannot happen
again. Yeah, correct. So
it's a conversion. It's basically converting
lactic to malic.
Lactic acid to malic acid. So basically, to make it really simple, you're converting a green apple, a Granny Smith apple. You bite that, you get that really crisp sharp into a pear or a poached pear. So like a much more rounded.
Yeah.
An apple. That's how I describe it to people when they ask, "What do you mean by lactic to malic?" And I'm like, "Well, it's a green Granny Smith to a poached pear."
Yeah, correct.
That's the difference that you're going for.
Just like a sharpness to a softness, and in Chardonnay it tends to give you that more buttery sort of edge. But having said that, it's only 15% malolactic, so
that's controlled by the winemaker through temperature.
Correct,
so
through temperature.
The winemaker can, if the wine heats up, malolactic conversion will automatically kick in, and a winemaker can control that by controlling the temperature of his tanks and of his barrels. So you can stop that. It gets very scientific and very nerdy,
it does.
Wine nerdy, as my wife likes to call it.
It goes back to wine can be extremely simple. Does it taste nice? Does it smell nice? Do you like it? Those three things, or
is it good enough?
And then, or it can go to what vintage, who made it. The winemaking can go.
The more you learn, the less you know. I feel in wine.
It
I
is.
reckon. Like the more I learn, then the less you
It's a
actually
never-ending
know.
pit.
Correct.
All right. Well, that brings us to our lovely pink rosé, which I'm going to leave Brendan to talk about for a very special reason.
So this is Flock Rosé. This is a Yarra Valley Rosé made by the very talented Stuart Dedeen from Alchemy Wines, and a collaboration between Stuart and myself. So this is actually technically my wine. Well, it's our wine. It's mine and Stu's, but when I'm in here, it's my wine. Stu, being the winemaker, was in charge of sourcing the grapes, which are 100% Syrah from Seville Hill. So it's very local. The vineyard's 3 minutes from my house. John is also someone that we, visits in here frequently and has a drink. Everything is done. The wine is made in Wonga Park, where Stu has his full-time job. The labelling.
It's a lovely label. I must say, sorry to butt in.
No, you're right.
But
butt away.
I love it. Look at that. Flamingo, rosé, and a nice pink lid. Beautiful. They just nailed it.
We did Flock. I like flamingos. I like that. I like pink, obviously being rosé. And we did the label out of foil, so it doesn't get wrecked in ice buckets. A lot of nice labels and pretty labels get ruined.
Smart.
There's really not a lot, in terms of the winemaking. It's, picked, taken to the winery, pressed, put into steel tank, fermented, sort of just Stu watched it go and then put into the bottle. We did 150 dozen last year. We're doing 100 dozen this year. It's your typical rosé profile, being being Syrah though and being whole bunch, we obviously get a little bit more
Savoury.
depth and a little bit more savoury,
depth,
yes,
yeah.
rather than, you know, that sort of like a bit of a lolly water sort of descriptor
Yeah.
or, you know, like a strawberries and cream, you know, the Allen's
Yeah,
lollies.
not
Like
too-
it still has that, it still has strawberries and
Oh,
cream.
yeah.
But there's a little bit more depth from that Syrah, that Shiraz, you know, grape varietal, just adds a little bit of depth and complexity. I think it's evolving into a better wine, you know, sort of now than where it was sitting, you know, November last year when we released it. You know, really happy with it. We've only got, you know, there's not many bottles left here either. We haven't got many bottles left.
Yeah,
You know,
it's been a flu on the weekend,
it's
didn't
been a
it?
hit, yeah. When the weather's good,
Well,
this
that's
goes
it.
with everything. This would go with fish tacos. This would go with,
Oh, yeah.
what was Stu's pairing? The vegan...
Oh, gee, yeah.
It's on the notes.
Oh,
I can't remember. I even
yeah.
write the notes myself and I still don't remember it. So, yeah. Look, I mean, I love it. It's a beautiful wine. It obviously holds a special place with me. So anybody that buys it, you know, you're directly supporting me as well. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Available here in notes anyway. I
Versatile.
bring bottles of my own stock in for tasting on weekends when I'm here. So you want to come in, say good day, have a taste. It'll really adds a different dimension to the pack too. You know, like adding a rosé goes away
sure.
from your standard, you know, whites and reds.
Yeah, absolutely.
We better move to the red though. Keep talking
Yeah,
about my own wine,
I guess
but
we've
think we're just trying to sell that.
transitioned, you know, whites, pink. So the natural progression's red. So what do we got? We got the Rosemount Estate, a lovely old winery. The GSM. So GSM, Grenache, Shiraz, Mourvedre, or Grenache, Syrah, Mourvedre. Syrah,
Shiraz,
yeah.
same grape, made in
Yeah.
different styles.
Correct, yeah.
Pinot Grigio, Pinot Gris, same thing. Same grape, made in a different style.
So I think here they've actually, I was just double checking, and they've gone for the Syrah, so perhaps, and I see why. You know,
it's
it's
Grenache
GSM
dominant.
blend. Yeah,
This would
like
be almost
70%.
Yeah, I was going to say it's.
So 70% Grenache, I think 17% Syrah and 13% Mourvedre. But you know, for your barbecues, you know, maybe when the temperature just sort of dips at the end of the day there, and you're getting some nice barbecued meats out, I think this is the pairer, and you know, Grenache is that sort of extremely aromatic edge, and Syrah's kind of plushing it out, giving it a bit of depth, and Mourvedre again, and maybe that savoury edge.
It's very savoury. It's already 5 years old and it still has like some grip, some bite. It's still got it. I think this would go for another 5-10 years easily. I mean, I think this is now. You could give this a little bit. This is now. This one would go the distance. Now. This could go, you know, another 5-10 quite comfortably. Being so Grenache dominant, McLaren Vale as well. Really well-known region for Grenache. It's a very it's high alcohol, is it?
I think it's 14,
feel it's a high
14.5.
alcohol.
It's probably 14.5. There you go. So yeah, it's got a little bit of a bite and depth to it, warmth.
Warm.
It does have a bit of that, but
Another
you know.
wine nerd term, isn't it? Wine is warm.
Yeah, warm. So what are we referring to? We're not saying this was put in a heater and then served to us. No. So
Just the descriptor in the mouth, the mouth feel like a heat in the mouth feel, almost not like a.
it's sort of like a reference to the alcohol, like
Yeah,
sort of
correct.
it's
The
there.
alcohol heat, and on the nose too. You can get it on the nose as well. Really.
Like when
heavily.
you've had vodka or a shot of vodka or something, and you got that alcohol heat warmth. That's clearly it's
Last
not.
time I had a shot of vodka.
Yeah, I was going
I'm
to
not
say
young
it's
anymore.
been a while.
I'm not as
Well,
young as you, mate. So I don't shot vodka.
don't worry, it's not something I'm acquainted with these days as well, for very good reasons. But yeah, I think that.
I think that sums up the pack. It was cheap, cheerful, quick. You know, for $165, I think you're getting a lot of value in the wines. You know, just over $25 a bottle.
Yeah.
Of average price, I think you're getting, you know, banging wine. None of the wines are under $25. Some of them are over 40.
Correct, yeah, there's a couple here over 40, 45. So
this will be up on Note's website over the coming days.
Yeah, so
I'm available in store every day. Immediately come in and see Carl's here every day. So.
And we'll have some of these on tasting pretty much almost throughout. Pretty much, I reckon, every
Just on the
weekend.
weekends,
I think the Prosecco we're more or less going to have on tasting every weekend.
Gruner's open every time.
Gruner's
Flock's
always
open
open,
when I'm
and Flock's always open when Brennan's around. So, you know, there's 3 wines there that you don't even, you know, you can come in and taste and...
Try before you buy.
Try before you buy, I guess, exactly. So,
thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. And
we will see you next month for the festive pack.
oh, yeah,
Thanks
stay
a lot.
tuned. See you guys.